जैन आगम ज्ञान।
नमो अर्हन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो उवज्जयाणं नमो लोये सपसहूणम्।
Kamales, Sripat Seth and Sundari once visited Sri Shilandhar Acharya and told him that although both of them observed daily vows such as reciting Navakara mantra and performed Navakarashi Samyak Yika, and their son Kamaleshan did not observe any vows. Kamalesan's parents were unhappy and anxious about the lack of devotion and spirituality of their son in their religion. They requested the monk to give some good advice to their son so that he would change for better and he can be happy in this life as well as the next. The monk willingly obliged. After reaching home, the merchant said to his son, "Well, my son, a great teacher is visiting our town. He is a very learned man and his lectures are worth listening." Next day they accompanied their son to the lecture. After paying respects by bowing down to the Acharya, they sat down to listen. The Acharya talked about many things including hell, heaven, misery, Keval Gyan. After the discourse, the parents asked Kamaleshan what he felt about the lecture. Kamaleshan replied, "I was too busy watching the movements of Acharya's neck area." His parents were greatly dismayed and returned home disappointed. Soon after, another great sage, Acharya Guna Sagar Suri, visited the town and his parents went to visit him with Kamaleshan. This Acharya told the audience about stories concerning the 9 tastes, rasas, because such stories attract common people. The boy liked those stories, so he began to attend Acharya's sermons every day and listened with interest. After a few days, the Acharya was leaving town. Kamaleshan joined the people in the farewell ceremony. Many people pledged to observe some vow in their life. Kamaleshan was asked if he would take a vow. He said, "I will not tell a lie except during day and night. I will not put the whole watermelon into my mouth, nor will I eat cow manure." The Acharya was embraced by his boy's ridiculous behavior. Hence, to make it up, the boy vowed not to eat food without looking at the bald head of Similo, a potter of the town. The Guruji was very pleased with Kamaleshan for taking a vow, even though it was a very strange vow. One day, Similo went out to the forest to get some clay, and Kamaleshan was about to eat lunch when his mother reminded him about his vow. He immediately ran to the forest to find the bald potter. There he saw the potter digging in the ground. While digging, the potter came across a jar full of gems and precious stones. At the boy's arrival, he started hiding it underneath the heap of soil. Kamaleshan shouted, "Yes, I have seen it," the bald head of the potter. The potter thought Kamaleshan meant the jar and he did not want anyone else to know about the gem. So he told the boy that he would share half of the pot if he did not tell anyone else. First, Kamaleshan did not understand what he was talking about, but later he understood and gladly accepted his offer and returned home. Kamaleshan thought deeply as he returned home. A simple vow taken out of a joke brought me this wealth. Had I taken this vow in seriousness, I would have been even richer. This incident changed Kamaleshan's life. He then observed many vows and became very happy. The key message is, when one takes vows to do something, it should require true devotion and discipline and require some form of sacrifice, which is consistent with the principles of Jainism. Taking vows that do not fit this profile is useless and has no meaning. Taking oaths and following through with them benefits one's soul. These benefits may be evident in one's existing human life or may not be evident until some future birth, but the vows definitely help disciplining present life.
यदक्षरपदभ्रष्टं मात्राहीनं च यद्भवेत् तत्सर्वं क्षम्यतां देव महावीर नमोस्तुते।
जैन आगमा ज्ञान।
नमो अर्हन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो उवज्जयाणं नमो लोये सपसहूणम्।
Kesari. King Vijaychandra was the ruler of Kamrupa city. In the same city there lived a merchant named Sanghadatta who had a son called Kesari. The merchant was known for his honesty, but his son was not. He was a thief. The merchant tried hard to change him, but he could not succeed. He was so fed up with his son's habit that he gave up on him. The merchant went to the king and brought this matter to his attention. He said, I am ashamed that my son is like that. Please you take care of him, because I do not want to have anything to do with him. The king called the son and asked him to leave his kingdom. Kesari left the town. While crossing the forest, he saw a water tank. He drank some water and sat down to rest. All of a sudden, he saw a man descending from the sky. He noticed the man was wearing a pair of magic sandals. As the man came down, he took off his sandals and hid them under the tree and then came to the water tank to drink. Kesari thought the magic sandals helped this man to fly in the sky. Kesari slowly moved out and picked up the sandals, put them on and started to fly. He flew all day long and then he returned home that evening. He was mad at his father for reporting him to the king. So he went to his house and beat up his father so hard that the old man died. Kesari was already a veteran thief, and now he had a pair of sandals that could take him anywhere. He went everywhere he wanted to go. He stole all that he could during the night and he could hide in the forest during the day. Soon he was a terror to everyone. Everyone was afraid of him. The citizens went to the king to ask for his help. The guards told the king, he is different than any other thief we have ever known. He flies away in the sky and he returns only at night. It will be almost impossible to catch him. The king himself decided to try to catch him. The king's party searched everywhere but could not find the thief. One morning in the forest, the king smelled some fragrance in the air. He followed the odor till he came to a temple that was dedicated to the goddess Ambika. When he entered the temple, he noticed a man offering worship. The king asked him who he was. The man replied, I am the son of a merchant. I am very poor and miserable. I worship this goddess to gain wealth and happiness. Every morning when I come here, I find precious gems and stones. The king was almost sure that he was the thief, but did not have any proof to catch him. He also thought that the thief must be coming late at night to the temple and leaving in the morning after the prayer. So the king decided to return at night time and see what was going on. He returned to the city to wait until dark. After it was dark, the king returned to the temple. Later in the night, Kesari came down from the sky. He took out his magic sandals and held them in his hand. After Kesari finished his worship, he started to leave the temple. The king chased Kesari. This happened so quick that he dropped the sandals and started running to save his life. The king's men also started to chase him. As Kesari was running, he was now thinking of his bad deeds and sins. Sometimes timely reflections can change a person. After running for some time, he came across a monk in the forest. He stopped and talked to the monk. By then his bad karmas were exhausted and his good karmas matured. He thought of accepting monkhood, and so he did. He became a monk before the king could arrest him. When the king saw him as a monk, he felt it was too late to catch him. The king felt better that the thief changed his lifestyle by becoming a monk, and the king bowed to his monkhood. The king went back to the city and the people lived without any more theft. Kesari carried his life of a monk, showing the path of liberation to the householders, and went to heaven at the end.
यदक्षरपदभ्रष्टं मात्राहीनं च यद्भवेत् तत्सर्वं क्षम्यतां देव महावीर नमोऽस्तु ते।
Jaina Agama Gyan.
नमो अर्हन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो उवज्जयाणं नमो लोये सपसहूणम्।
King Hansa. In the city of Rajpur, there was a king named Hansa. He was a fair and just king. He was known for his devotion to truth and non-violence. On the top of Mount Ratnasringa, there stood a beautiful temple that was dedicated to the first Tirthankara, Rishabhadev. During the month of Chaitra, when the full moon appeared, people came from far away places to visit and worship in the temple. Once the king also decided to visit the temple. He gave control of his kingdom temporarily to his council of ministers and left with the members of the royal household on this spiritual mission. A few days later, after King Hansa departed, another king named Arjuna attacked King Hansa's city. In spite of strong fight, King Hansa's army was defeated and many of the generals lost their lives on the battlefield. King Arjuna gained the control of the palace and the treasury. Arjuna sat on the throne and enforced his authority over the entire kingdom. King Hansa heard the story of this defeat on the way to the temple. The king's courtiers were very upset and advised him that he should return to the city. The king said, I have given up the control of kingdom and we are on spiritual mission, and that is what we should be thinking about. So let us keep going to the temple. The king's courtiers were unhappy about the king's decision and worried about the safety of their families at home. One by one they all dropped out, and now only one umbrella bearer servant was left with the king. On the way to the temple, the king got lost in the forest. Now he was concerned about their own safety, so he took off his royal dress and jewelry and gave them to his servant. While walking through the forest, this servant also got separated from the king. As the king walked further, all of a sudden a deer ran in front of him and disappeared. Right from that, a hunter came running with a bow in his hand and asked the king if he had seen the deer. The king knew that if he told the truth, the deer would get killed, so he decided not to answer the question and kept on telling other irrelevant things. So he said that he came from Rajpur. The hunter asked him again about the deer, and he answered that he was the king. The hunter was very upset with his answers and left with anger. By now the king was tired and rested under a tree. He overheard the discussion going on in the bush about robbing the monks who would pass through this way in next 2 days. The king got concerned about the safety of the monks. While he was thinking that he can do, some policemen approached him and asked if he saw any suspicious people looking like robbers. They said these people are very dangerous and we have heard that they harm the holy people. We are sent to capture or even shoot them if necessary to protect the holy people. The king was once again in dilemma whether to tell the truth. He was concerned that if he told about those people, then they would be harmed, and if not, monks would be harmed. He thought by telling the truth, if someone is going to get harmed or killed, then telling that truth is not the truth. Truth is supposed to protect and not harm anyone. He said, my friends, you are asked to guard the monks. Why not go and look after those monks and worry about robbers if they confront the monks? The policemen felt better and left to join the monks. The robbers who were hiding in the bush heard all this. They were amazed by the mercy shown by this stranger. They came out and thanked him for saving their lives and told him that they were at his service. The king advised them, my dear friends, give up harassing people and fugitive life and be good citizens. The robbers promised that they would not harm the monks anymore and would try to give up robbery and left. As if this was not enough, a group of horsemen came and asked him if he had seen King Hansa. The king asked, what do you want from King Hansa? They explained that they were the trusted men of King Arjuna and they had been told to catch King Hansa and kill him. King Hansa thought for a while and said, I am King Hansa. Carry out your duty as told by your king. After saying that, he closed his eyes and stood in meditation and started reciting the Navakara mantra. All at once a Dev, an angel, made his appearance and said, O king, I am overwhelmed by your truthfulness and compassion. I have captured King Arjun as prisoner and gave control of your kingdom to your minister. Today is a great day for worship and the temple is too far from here. There is no way you would reach there in time. My chariot is at your service. Please let me take you there. The King Hansa was surprised by the miraculous turn of the event. In the company of the angel god, he reached the summit of Ratnasringa in time to worship. The angel god then escorted him to his kingdom. King Hansa pardoned King Arjun and released his soldiers immediately. The angel appointed 4 lieutenants to look after the safety of the king and his kingdom and departed. Then King Hansa once again ruled the king of Rajpur and the people were happy.
यदक्षरपदभ्रष्टं मात्राहीनं च यद्भवेत् तत्सर्वं क्षम्यतां देव महावीर नमोऽस्तु ते।
Jaina Agama Gyan.
नमो अर्हन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो उवज्जयाणं नमो लोये सपसहूणम्।
King Megharat. Once there was a discussion going on in Indra's head of heavenly angels' court. One of the demigods said that there are brave and merciful kings on earth who would not hesitate laying down their own lives to protect those who come to them for a shelter. Another demigod doubted his statement. The two began to argue, and so Indra intervened by asking them to go to the earth and see for themselves. The two demigods made a plan of action. One of them decided to take the form of a pigeon and the other took the form of a hawk. On the earth, King Megharat was sitting in his court surrounded by his courtiers. At that time, a pigeon flew in through an open window and started circling inside the hall. To the king's surprise, it landed on his lap. The king realized that the pigeon had come there out of fear. At that very instant, a hawk flew into the king's court too. He said, "The king, this pigeon is my prey." The king was struck with wonder to hear a bird speak. However, he replied, "It is true that this pigeon is your prey, but I can give you some other food." He ordered his servants to bring a basket of sweets, but the hawk said, "I am not a human being, I am not vegetarian, I need the flesh of my food." The king said, "Let me give you my own flesh instead of this pigeon's flesh." Upon hearing this, one of the courtiers said, "Your Majesty, why should you give your own flesh? Let's get the flesh from a butcher's shop." The king replied, "No, because just as a confectioner's business thrives when we consume sweets, a butcher's trade flourishes when we use up meat. The butcher may have to kill another animal in order to supply us the meat. This pigeon has sought refuge and it is my duty to protect it. At the same time, it is my duty to see that no one else is harmed in this process. Therefore, I will give my own flesh to the hawk." With these words, he took out his dagger and cut off a piece of flesh from his thigh and offered that to the hawk. The whole court was stunned. But the hawk said to the king, "O king, I want the same amount of flesh as the pigeon." So a weighing scale was brought to the court. The king put the pigeon on one side and a piece of his own flesh on the other. The king kept putting more and more of his flesh on the scale, but was still not enough. Finally, the king was getting ready to put his whole body on the scale. The court filled with the murmur that the king was giving his own life for an insignificant bird. But the king considered it his duty and religion to be above everything else. He sat on the side opposite to the pigeon in the scale, closed his eyes, and began meditating in the piece. As soon as the king entered into the meditation, the pigeon and the hawk assumed their original divine form. Both demigods bowed to the king and said, "O great king, you are blessed. We are convinced that you are a brave and merciful man." With these words, they praised and saluted the king again and left. The whole court resounded with the joyous words, "Long live the King Megharaz." Later on, the soul of King Megharaz became the 16th Tirthankara Shantinath. A merciful person is someone who is not only influenced by seeing the misery and suffering of others, but goes a step further and attempts to alleviate the pain. He gives financial aid to those who are poverty-stricken and gives food to those who are hungry and needy. A merciful person would not harm others to promote himself, but on the contrary would sacrifice even his own life to save the lives of others.
यदक्षरपदभ्रष्टं मात्राहीनं च यद्भवेत् तत्सर्वं क्षम्यतां देव महावीर नमोस्तुते।
Jaina Agama Gyan.
नमो अर्हन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो उवज्जयाणं नमो लोये सपसहूणम्।
Kuldhar's daughter. Long ago in the city of Champapuri, there lived a very rich merchant named Kuladhar and his wife Kulananda. The merchant had 7 daughters. He named them Kamaleshri, Kamalavati, Kamala, Lakshmi, Saraswati, Jayamati and Priyankarani. All his daughters were married to rich merchants and were very happy. Kuladhar and his wife Kulananda gave birth to their 8th daughter, but somehow they were not happy at her birth. They did not perform a naming ceremony. The 8th girl was less fortunate. As she grew up, her father did not care to find her as husband. If someone brought this matter to his attention, he would only say that should be settled as soon as he found the right proof for her. He was not worried about her happiness at all. One day, while Kuladhar was at his work, a strange young man came up to him. The man was dressed poorly, his hair was a mess, and he was covered with lice. The merchant asked him, "Where are you from? What are you doing here?" The young man replied, "My father's name is Nandi and my mother's name is Soma. They are in Koshalpur. My name is Nandan. I went to Chandadesh to look for work. One merchant gave me a job to deliver this letter to a man named Vasant Dev who lives in your city." Kuladhar was not listening to him. All he was thinking about was giving his daughter to this man. He told the young man, "I am going to send someone with you, and as soon as you deliver the letter, I want you to come back and talk to me." Meanwhile, Kuladhar arranged his servant to prepare a bath, some clothes, and some food for this young man. When Nandan returned, he took a bath, changed his clothes, and finished eating. After that, Kuladhar offered him his daughter to marry. Nandan said, "I was to return to Chandadesh immediately." The merchant said, "Young man, it will not take long to arrange the wedding. I'll give you money for both of you until you get to Chandadesh." A few hours later, they were married, and the time came for his daughter to say goodbye to her parents. The couple then headed to Chandadesh. It was getting dark and they were getting tired. They found a temple and decided to spend a night there. After his wife went to sleep, Nandan thought, "I will not reach Chandadesh in time because my wife cannot walk as fast as I can. Also, it would take too much money for us both to live. So what would happen later on? I would have to beg." He did not like the idea of begging, so he decided to leave his wife behind. At sunrise, when the daughter of Kuladhar woke up, she realized that her husband was gone and he took all the money with him. She started thinking, "What will happen to me without my husband?" At first she considered going back to her parents' house, but then she thought that she was not treated well there either. So what was the use of going back there? Thought of begging sent chills through her body. She decided that she would look for work and support herself, but she did not know where to go and which town she may reach next. She did not have any choice. She started on the same road they were going before. After some time, she reached the city named Avantidesh. She went to the marketplace to look for work. The first person she saw was a merchant named Manibhadra. She stood there and looked at him and developed a good feeling about this man. So she asked him for work. At first, Manibhadra felt sorry for her but was afraid to employ a stranger. The merchant decided to find out who she was. So he asked her, "Who are you?" She told him, "I am the daughter of Kuladhar from Champapuri. I was on my way to Chandadesh with my husband, but we were separated on the way. So now I am looking for work to support myself till I find him." Manibhadra felt comfortable with her now. He invited her to stay in his house and appointed her in charge of his household affairs. He sent several men to search for her husband, but they could not find him. He also checked on her parents and found out that she was telling the truth. As time passed, everyone in the family began to like her and show her a lot of affection. Later on, Manibhadra built a big Jain temple with large gates and colorful flags. Kuladhar's daughter went to the temple every day to worship Jinnah, and there she met many nuns. As she became involved with the nuns and learned the Jain doctrines and Navatattva, she accepted the vows of a Shravika and felt much better about her life. One day, Kuladhar's daughter noticed that Manibhadra seemed depressed. She asked him the reason. He said, "The king was trusted me to upkeep the garden. and supply him with flowers every day. I don't know how, but suddenly the garden has turned dry. I do not know how am I going to provide flowers for the king. I am afraid the king will become upset. I do not know what he will do. Kuladhar's daughter made a resolution that until the garden was restored with flowers, she would not eat any food or drink any liquids. So she returned to the temple. After she bowed to Jina, she went into deep Kayostasarga penance. 2 days went by, and on the third day the goddess appeared and said, "My daughter, your woe is fulfilled, and in the morning the garden will be restored." The next morning a miracle happened. The garden was more beautiful than ever. It had more fresh flowers than anyone could hope for. The merchant now accepted her as his daughter in his mind. He rushed to the temple to congratulate her for the beautiful garden. The whole town rushed to the temple after they heard the surprising news, and everybody praised her. After realizing that the garden was revived, she broke her fast after offering food to the nuns. One night while lying on bed, Kuladhar's daughter thought, by good fortune I came into the contact of temple and nuns. I must make the best of this. So she changed her life. She would fast for 2, 3 or 4 days. Sometimes she would fast for a month. She lived a very pious life. When her life came to an end, she went to heaven.
यदक्षरपदभ्रष्टं मात्राहीनं च यद्भवेत् तत्सर्वं क्षम्यतां देव महावीर नमोस्तुते।
Jaina Agama Gyan.
नमो अर्हन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो उवज्जयाणं नमो लोये सपसहूणम्।
Lord Shantinath. Lord Shantinath's soul in his previous incarnation was Megharath, son of King Dhanrath of Pundarakani town in Mahavideha area. King Dhanarath gave his throne to his son and became ascetic. Megharath was a religious ruler. He was compassionate and protected all living beings. Being a Kshatriya and a warrior, he had the courtesy to sacrifice all he had in order to protect those in trouble. One day, while observing the partial renunciation oath, he was about to start a discourse on the religion propagated by Tirthankaras. All of a sudden, a peasant, trembling with fear, fell in his lap and uttered in choking human voice, "Save me, O king, give me refuge, take me under your protection." The compassionate king comforted the bird and took it under his protection. The pigeon was followed by a falcon who too uttered in human language, "O king, this pigeon is my food, leave it alone." The king tried to explain, "It has taken refuge with me. As such, I am duty bound to protect it. I'll give you any type of food you want. Why kill a living thing just to fill your stomach?" The falcon insisted, "If you will not leave it, I may die of hunger. I am a carnivore who will provide me food. If I die, you will be responsible and bear the sin." When the falcon did not yield, Megharath said at last, "O falcon, as long as I exist, I will not allow you to die. I'll cut out flesh from my body equivalent to the weight of this little pigeon and give it to you. You may satisfy your urge to eat, but under no circumstance I shall allow you to kill the bird that has taken refuge with me." The falcon agreed to this proposal, and the king put the pigeon in one pan of balance and in the other started putting pieces of flesh cut out from his own body. Everybody present on the scene were spellbound and full of tears. Surprisingly, the weight of the pigeon continued to increase and King continued putting flesh in the pan. Witnessing this pathetic scene, the queens and the members of the assembly were moved to tears. They requested the king not to sacrifice his precious life for a mere pigeon. The falcon was also requested to relent, but he too declined. The king continued to cut flesh from his body and put it in the pan of the balance. At last, when the pieces of flesh were not enough, the king got up from his seat and sat down in the pan. Everyone present was dumbstruck at this lofty compassion and chivalry displayed by the king. Suddenly there was a flash of divine light and a divine personage appeared. The pigeon and the falcon disappeared. The god addressed the king. Maharaj, the king of gods was praising your compassion and courage in his assembly. I could not contain myself and came around to test you myself. All this was my creation. You come out with flying colors. You are worthy of the praise bestowed on you by the king of gods. Please forgive me. The god filled Megharat's wounds instantaneously and left for his abode. Whenever there is a talk about chivalry and compassion, King Megharat's name is taken with respect. King Megharat's uncommon purity and determination made gods to bow to him with reverence.
यदक्षरपदभ्रष्टं मात्राहीनं च यद्भवेत् तत्सर्वं क्षम्यतां देव महावीर नमोऽस्तु ते।
Jaina Agama Gyan.
नमो अर्हन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो उवज्जयाणं नमो लोये सपसहूणम्।
Bhagavan Mahavir and the cowherder. One day, as Lord Mahavir was going from one place to another, he stopped near a big tree outside the village to meditate. While he was meditating, a cowherder came there with his cows. He needed someone to look after the cows so he could run some errands. He asked Mahavir Swami if he would look after the cows for a few hours. Lord Mahavir was in deep meditation and did not hear the cowherder. However, the cowherder went away thinking that Lord Mahavir had heard him and will look after the cows. In the meantime, the cows started wandering away, looking for and grazing grass. A few hours later, the cowherder returned and found all his cows missing. He asked Mahavir Swami, "Where are my cows? What did you do with them?" Lord Mahavir was still in meditation and did not reply. The cowherd started wondering, where could they be? Since Lord Mahavir did not reply, the cowherder searched for them everywhere in the valley, but could not find them. While he was looking for the cows, they returned to the place where Mahavir Swami was meditating. When the cowherder came back, to his amazement, all his cows were standing near Lord Mahavir. Mahavir Swami was still meditating. The cowherder became very angry at Lord Mahavir because he thought that Lord Mahavir was hiding his cows. So he took out his rope and was about to whip Mahavir Swami with it. Just then an angel from heaven came down and held the rope. "Can't you see that Lord Mahavir is in deep meditation?" asked the angel. "But he tricked me," said the cowherder. The angel replied, "He is a god. He does not care for your cows or anything else in this world. He was in meditation and did not hear you. He did not do anything to your cows. You would have gotten bad karmas for hurting him." The cowherder realized that he had made a mistake. He apologized to Lord Mahavir and went away silently. The angel went back to heaven feeling happy that he could stop Lord Mahavir's suffering. Mahavir did not have any bad feelings towards the cowherder because he held no anger towards anyone. We should not make hasty decisions because we can be wrong. We should also not hurt anyone and should observe forgiveness instead of anger. This way we can stop new karma from coming to our soul.
यदक्षरपदभ्रष्टं मात्राहीनं च यद्भवेत् तत्सर्वं क्षम्यतां देव महावीर नमोऽस्तु ते।
Jaina Agama Gyan.
नमो अर्हन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो उवज्जयाणं नमो लोये सपसहूणम्।
Airavati. Long time ago, in the city of Shiktiprashit, there was a king named Ritumardhan. His wife, Madan Rekha, was a very devoted and religious queen. She gave birth to a baby girl and named her Mairavati. The princess was beautiful and bright. As she grew older, the king arranged for her general education, while the queen took care of her spiritual teachings. One day when the court was in session, the queen asked Mairavati to attend the court. She was dressed in her finest robe and jewelry. Her father, Ritumardhan, had her sit on the throne with him. The king asked his courtiers, "Does anyone in this world have as much wealth as I do?" The courtiers answered, "Your Majesty, we cannot even think of that much wealth, even in a dream, let alone having it. Nobody else in this world has as much wealth as you do." The princess disagreed and said, "There may be many other kings who have in their possession equal or more treasures. We should not brag about what we have." The king overlooked this comment. He asked another question, "With whose grace are you all happy?" The courtiers replied, "By your grace, your Majesty, there is no doubt about it." The princess again disagreed. She said, "What is wrong with you all? You do not have to flatter him. You know what we receive is due to our own karmas. Father, if you think you can make everyone happy, then why don't you make everybody happy on the same level as yours? That is impossible, and what is happening is nothing but the result of everybody's own karmas." The king became outraged and shouted, "Crazy girl, why are you talking to me like this? Who taught you such things? You know that I can make a poor man rich or the rich man a poor man. If you agree with me, I will have you marry a prince, but if you disagree, I will marry you to a poor guy, and you will see how your karmas work." The princess replied calmly to her father, "You are mistaken," she continued. "If I do not have good karmas in my favor, then even the best of the grooms chosen for me can turn into a beggar. We should not brag as if we can do anything and everything." The king was very upset. He ordered his guards, "Go and find the poorest, the meanest, and the ugliest man, and I will have her marry him. I want to see how her karmas save her." The princess stayed calm. The king's men found a leper and brought him to the court. His ears were rotten, nose flat, and his fingers were oozing pus all over the place. The king was very happy with their choice. He told the princess, "Defiant girl, it is my order that you marry him." The princess married him without any hesitation. She slowly got down and accepted this man as her husband. Everybody in the court was stunned. The king was satisfied with his action. The princess was asked to remove her precious clothes and jewelry and was ordered to leave the city. Princess and her husband left the city. The princess was as happy as ever before. She never regretted what she had told her father. She had full faith in her religious belief. They walked the whole day, and later in the evening they took shelter in a temple. The leper was very moved by her. He told her, I know what your father did was not right, and it is not easy for a royal girl to marry a leper. You should disregard our marriage and marry another man of your choice. The princess told him, Why are you talking to me like this? I have accepted you as my husband, and I am happy with my choice. She continued, Wealth, health, beauty, and comfort or discomfort are all the results of our karmas. We should not feel happy or unhappy by that. The karmas change and their results change. So let us not worry about that. The leper was very impressed by her reply and started to admire the princess. He thought, What a noble woman! How strong her religious beliefs are! As the sun set, the leper fell asleep. The princess was still awake doing prayer. She noticed an old woman with a young man approaching them. The old woman told the princess, I know what happened to you. I did not like your father's behavior, and I have come to help you. I have brought with me a young man who is handsome, and you should leave that leper and marry this young man. You will be happy with him. The princess told the old woman, Madam, I am married to this man with my own wish and with the consent of my father, and I am not backing out. A woman marries only once. He may be a leper, but for me, he is the king of the kings, my king. The old woman became angry and said, If you take my advice, you will be happy. Otherwise, I will kill you. The princess started uttering the Namokar mantra. At once, a miracle happened. There was neither the leper nor the old woman. Instead, a divine person stood in front of her. The leper had turned into Manik Chand, and he said, I am Manik Chand, the king of the city named Manipur on the Vaitidadhya hill. Once I heard someone say, Crows are black everywhere, parrots are always green, happy are happy everywhere, misery the wretched are in. So I decided to test this. Therefore I changed myself into a leper to find this out. The king's men picked me up. You proved that real happy person could be happy in any situation. You are truly honorable and praiseworthy. How lucky I am to have you as my wife and my queen. The princess did not know if this was a dream or if it was the real. She still stood confident in her belief that purity always shines. The princess showed her gratefulness to the divine person, her husband, and accepted that this also happened because of her karma. They lived happily ever after. Key message. There are a number of key themes implied in this story. First is that happiness or misery is a state of mind regardless of the situation that one is in. If you think you are miserable, then you will be miserable. So many people in life are unhappy today, even though they have so many luxuries, love, health, and freedom that many less fortunate souls only dream of. This is why many people with less material wealth enjoy more happiness and lead more meaningful lives than do the well-to-do. Full faith in the theory of karma is essential to a state of contentment and happiness. Second key message is that of faithfulness to one's spouse. The princess' belief and commitment to the institution of marriage is admirable. The message is that we as human beings should respect our spouses and stay committed to them until we move to another life.
यदक्षरपदभ्रष्टं मात्राहीनं च यद्भवेत् तत्सर्वं क्षम्यतां देव महावीर नमोस्तुते.
Jaina Agama Gyan.
नमो अर्हन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो उवज्जयाणं नमो लोये सपसहूणम्.
King Shrenik of Magadha had a beautiful queen named Dharini. Once while she was sleeping, She dreamt that a white elephant was entering her mouth. She immediately woke up and told the king about the dream. Shrenik knew that it was an auspicious dream. She called the fortune tellers, who stated that the queen would get a handsome and lovable son who would have marvelous achievements to his credit. The king and queen were very much pleased to hear this. During the 3rd month of her pregnancy, Dharini had an irresistible urge to ride in the country on an elephant with the king during rain, while the king is full of clouds of different hues and there are frequent flashes of lightning. In most of India, it rains only during the monsoon, which occurs from June to October. Dharini, however, had the urge during off-season. The fulfillment of her urge was therefore a problem. In order to see that she is not affected by the unsatisfied urge, King asked his eldest son and the Prime Minister Abhay Kumar to devise some way to satisfy that urge. Abhay Kumar had a friend who could make miracles. He exhorted that friend to cause untimely rain for the sake of his stepmother. That friend arranged exactly according to Dharini's urge. She therefore could ride on an elephant with the king and satisfy her urge. In due course she gave birth to a very handsome, attractive boy. Rain in Indian language is called Megha. In memory of the pregnancy urge of Dharini, the boy was named Megha Kumar. At the age of 8 he was sent to school where he learnt all 72 arts and crafts and became known as an accomplished youth. He was then married to 8 beautiful girls with whom he enjoyed all the pleasures of the worldly life. Once Lord Mahavira came to Rajagrihi and camped in Gunashil monastery. Almost every resident of Rajagriha used to go to his sermon. Megha Kumar went as well and was very much impressed. Realizing the transitory nature of the worldly situation as explained by the Lord, he decided to renounce his worldly life, but his parents were sad to hear about his intentions. They tried every means to stop him from renouncing. He, however, remained very firm. But in order to satisfy his parents' wish, he agreed to become the king for one day and was coronated with all the royal pomp. Immediately after that he left everything and became a possessionless monk of Lord Mahavira. At night he was allotted a place near the door for spreading his bed. During the night, monks going for bathroom had to walk past his side. Since no lamps are allowed in the monk's residence, they happened to trample his bed and at times his body as well. Poor Megha Kumar could not sleep for the whole night. He was raised in all the luxuries and even monks used to treat him with regards. It was therefore awful for him to face the feet of the monks and the dirt that was brought all over his bed and body. He had to stay sleepless for the entire night. He felt that he could not bear that sort of miserable life and decided to give up renouncement. In the morning he went to the Lord to seek permission to return home. The Lord was aware of the discomforts that he had faced. He, however, asked him, Megha, do you remember the discomforts that you had faced during the previous life? Since Megha Kumar did not, the Lord described it as the following. During the previous life, you were the king of elephants and were known as Meru Prabha. Once there was a fire which you escaped narrowly that reminded you of the terrible fire you had faced in still earlier life. For a shelter from fire, you therefore opened up a vast stretch of land by removing all plants, bushes and trees, so that all animals could get refuge in case of a fire. You also weeded out grass that grew there. Again there was a wildfire in your forest. All the animals came running and took refuge on that stretch. You also were there. During that time, you raised your foot to scratch your body because of an itch. That very time, a rabbit was pushed in that space by the pressure of other animals. As you tried to put the foot back, you felt the presence of the rabbit and decided to hold the foot up in order to save it. The fire raged for 2.5 days, during which you continued to hold your foot up out of compassion for the rabbit. At the end of the fire, as the animals retreated, you tried to lower your foot. It had, however, stiffened during that time. You could not maintain your balance and fell down. You felt agonizing pain and could not get up. That way you spent 3 days and night facing much affliction and acute pain. Ultimately you left that body and were born here as the Prince of Shrenik because of your compassion for the rabbit. If you could face that much distress for the sake of rabbit and gain the valuable human life in return, how come you cannot face the foot dirt of your fellow monks in the interest of gaining lasting happiness? Meghakumar was impressed by the Lord's words and realized that he should stay on in his own interest. He requested the Lord to initiate him afresh, since he had virtually broken his vow of the monkhood by strongly desiring the worldly life. The Lord did not accordingly, and Meghamuni, as he was called after that, started leading rigorous austere life. Fasting for days together, he stayed most of time in meditation in order to eradicate his karmas. The Lord and Gautam Swami too praised him for that. When his body became very weak and could no longer observe the rigors of monkhood, he decided to observe fast unto death. That he did for a month on Mount Vaibhargiri near Rajgriha and took birth in heaven. The Lord has stated to Gautam Swami that at the end of the heavenly life he would be reborn in Mahavideha and would attain salvation. Key message: here is a great example of compassion. An elephant bears discomfort and pain to save a little animal. We are more developed and rational beings. We should learn from these animals to be helpful to each other. Besides, when one takes on an oath to lead the life a monk, one should not revert to worldly life. This is a very tough and rigorous life, meant to give an understanding of the true nature of the soul. In order to achieve this understanding, one must put aside the worldly life permanently, because it tends to distort things. Suffering occurs because of one's past karma, so one should accept it and focus on the soul and self-realization.
यदक्षरपदभ्रष्टं मात्राहीनं च यद्भवेत् तत्सर्वं क्षम्यतां देव महावीर नमोस्तुते.
Jaina Agama Gyan.
नमो अर्हन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो उवज्जयाणं नमो लोये सपसहूणम्.
Monk Kurgadu and Kulguru. In ancient times, there was a businessman named Dhandatta. He was highly religious. He had a son who was also full of religious perspective. Once Dharma Ghosh Suri, the highly enlightened Acharya of that time, came to town where Dhanadatta lived. Thereafter, Dhanadatta went to listen to his sermon along with his young son. The boy was much impressed by the talk of the Acharya and decided to become his pupil. Accordingly, he renounced the worldly life and became a monk at the very young age. The Acharya could foresee that the boy was destined to be a great entity. He therefore named him as Kulguru. In the native language of that area, he came to be known as Kurgadu. Kurgadu seriously studied the holy books and correctly grasped their essence. He realized the role of karma in the life of every being, and thereby he learned to maintain a high level of equanimity. He also rigorously observed the code of conduct for monks. However, he had a problem. He could not stay hungry and as such could not fast. He had to eat at least once a day. Even during Paryushan Parva, he could not fast for a single day. When he had to eat on such days of Parva, he felt bad and regretted that he had acquired incapability to fast because of his previous karma. When other monks observed long or short fasts, he praised them and rendered every type of service to them. He wished in heart of hearts that he too could observe fast. Jain monks do not move from place to place during monsoon that normally sets in June and ends in October. The Paryushan Parva occurs roughly in the middle of that period. While the Acharya was once camping in the monsoon season, Paryushan Parva came. On that occasion, many of the monks undertook long fasts extending to more than a month. The senior monk under whom Kurgadu was working had undertaken 1 month's fast. Kurgadu felt sad that he could not undertake such austerities. 7 days passed that way, and the day of Samvatsari dawned. He wished that he could observe fast at least on that day. Before noon, however, he felt very hungry and could not stay without food. He wondered what sort of body he had acquired that he could not fast even for 1 day. As it was impossible for him to stay without food, he went to the senior monk and begged his permission to go for alms. That latter scornfully asked him why he could not survive without food at least for 1 day. He should be inspired to observe fast at least for that day, especially when all his colleagues were on long fast. Kurgadu humbly replied that he did wish to observe fast but very much regretted his inability to fast. The senior monk pitied his miserable fate and resentfully allowed him to go for alms. Kurgadu went for alms and most regretfully accepted the food that was offered to him. Coming back, he presented the same to the senior monk as a part of the code of monk's conduct and begged his permission to eat. He had done that in all modesty. That monk, however, became very annoyed by that request. He could not believe that it was beyond the capacity of Kurgadu to fast for 1 day. He therefore took the humble gesture of Kurgadu as an audacity and despairingly said that the miserable wretch did not deserve to be a monk. So saying, he respectfully pushed the food bowl towards him. Kurgadu accepted that scornful gesture as a graceful permission, and going to his place, he most reluctantly started to eat. All the other monks were watching with disgust the taking of food by Kurgadu on that auspicious day and pitied that he was acquiring unwholesome karmas by eating on the day of Samvatsari. While eating, Kurgadu himself dwelt deep into the inability of his body to remain without food even for a day. Well read as he was, he could see that it must have been the outcome of his previous karma. He knew that all karma drip off after extending the appropriate consequence, and this karma too was going to drop off. He therefore made up his mind to dispassionately bear what had been ordained by his karma. Because of his duty of the scriptures, he had gained enough insight about the true nature of soul. His despising himself for not observing fast was functioning as a handicap for the full realization of that true nature. Now his willingness to accept what was destined endowed him the insight of distinguishing the nature of soul from the varying states of the body and mind that gave rise to the manifestation of the true nature of the soul. His realization was strong enough to destroy all the defiling karmas on the spot, and he gained omniscience while eating the food. When one attains omniscience, even the heavenly beings come to the place for offering their obeisance. When other monks saw the heavenly beings approaching the place for the purpose, everyone thought that they must have been pleased by the acute austerities of some of them and were coming to bow to those monks. Instead, the heavenly beings turned to Kurgadu and offered their obeisance to him. No one could understand why those observing acute austerity were left out, while the one who could not observe it at all had gained full enlightenment. In all amazement, they went to Dharmagosha Suri and asked the reason for what had happened. The Acharya said that all of them were feeling too much proud of their austerities and were unnecessarily despairing Kurgadu for not observing fast. Thereby they were smeared by perception, obscuring karma that obscured right perception. He urged them to bear in mind that the primary purpose of undertaking austerities or any other religious practice was to gain modesty, which leads to right perception and in turn helps in attaining equanimity. They had misguided Kurgadu, who had realized the essence of religion. Earlier he had acquired austerity, obstructing karma that did not allow him to observe the austerity. He did feel sad and sincerely repented for that karma which had become operative in his current life. By properly comprehending the role of karma, he had been imbibed with right perception. He did regret for that, but was bearing the consequence of the karma with equanimity. This could help in wiping out the previously acquired karmas without incurring new bondage. Key message: all the monks realized that they were indulging in unnecessary vanity that obstructed the dawn of right perception. The Acharya also explained that the soul had really nothing to do with the state and activities of the body. The body is obtained as a consequence of the operative karma and should be used simply as an instrument for realizing the true nature of soul. It can be an effective instrument only if it were used purposefully. Understanding the true nature of soul was the essence of religion, and that is the main thing worth pursuing in this life.
यदक्षरपदभ्रष्टं मात्राहीनं च यद्भवेत् तत्सर्वं क्षम्यतां देव महावीर नमोऽस्तुते।